Folks, happy Friday and welcome to the Freedom from the Press podcast. My name is Jason Robertson and I'm joined with my partner in crime,
Todd Peterson. Good to have you with us again. Happy Friday, and a little bit of a different flavor for us, shall we say. We're going to go down the rabbit hole of predictive programming today. It promises to be entertaining. Take it with a grain of salt, but once you see some things, you can't unsee them. We'll put it that way.
Yeah, it's so funny. And before we get into it, I want to give a shout out to Todd and to our viewers. Yesterday, we had the pleasure. I'm a co-host on the Wayne Dupree podcast, available on Rumble, YouTube. Just search Wayne Dupree. And yesterday, Wayne and the other co-host Hutch were out. So Todd joined me, and we actually did the whole podcast, and we dug into the Supreme Court case that you haven't heard about. It's about one of the January 6th guys that was convicted and based on obstructing an official government operation. And it's fascinating. I would encourage you, take a minute, go watch that episode. You're going to learn something. It's going to blow your mind.
Jason, can I just say this much about it? Then we're going to dive into predictive programming because it's fascinating. But 1512, folks, if you're curious to do a little digging, look up 1512 C2. This is from the former Enron scandal, if you recall, in 2001, late 90s, early 2000s. They had to dig up a financial fraud law in order to charge all of the J6 defendants with something that would stick and had meat and could get them in prison for a long time. That's how you know they were desperate to make something happen against Trump and his supporters. They had to go back 20 years to a law that was never designed to be applied this way. 1512 C2, you'll thank us later.
Oh my gosh, yeah, that was a fun one. But Todd and I, it was funny. You know, we work on our project at the American Tribune, and every now and then something hits our timeline, and we're like, we try to do a little deeper dives, kind of go underneath the surface, just not cover breaking news here. And I got to say, when some of this stuff came out, we had to don the tinfoil hats. Because we've talked about on this podcast how I believe there's a chance that we don't have an election next year. Something happens, who knows? Nobody saw COVID coming, right? If you would have said, hey, we're going to lock down the whole country, you wouldn't have. But some of us saw that because it was already built in.
Well, it's interesting you say that, Jason. I think somebody might have seen it coming, and we're going to speak with mights and maybes and perhaps, because Facebook, we're not saying with any certainty. We're just saying that the possibility exists.
Right. And so for this, it was interesting because we were talking to just friends of ours and different acquaintances, and it's remarkable how few people understand the connection between the government and their predictive programming and media outlets. And so we're going to go through kind of the background, and we're going to start with some congressional testimony, and we're going to start bringing it up to speed in current time, show you some things that were precursors to big world events, and then talk about some of the content that they're pushing out now that is going to kind of blow your brains a little bit. You're going to go, this is nuts.
And Jason, before we do, I want to set the stage with current events because we're going to ground this in reality. I know you have your tinfoil hat, but this is 100% true. We know without a doubt now that the U.S. government colluded with big tech companies, Twitter, Facebook, all the other big tech giants, and they helped control the narratives that were shaped around the pandemic, let's say, about election conversations, about things that you could put into your body to protect yourself. The government has been proven to have been involved with that in the conversation, shaping conversations on social media. So when we say government is involved in how it affects what you see on TV and the media, when you watch movies from Hollywood, it is not a leap to say that this is probably happening. It's been admitted to happen by some folks. We're not making all of this up. This is already provable. Go check yourself. The Fifth Court of Appeals that has the big tech case going on right now and said the government overreached the First Amendment. So this is all something that can be verified if you want to go check for yourself too.
Well, yeah, and it's funny you say that. Darren Kidney, thanks for joining, Darren. But he says something big's going to happen. Democrats' backs are against the wall. I'm going to take it one step further, Darren. Something big's going to happen because Democrat and establishment Republicans' backs are against the wall. The American people are waking up. They're seeing this weaponization of government. They're seeing us going into World War III. the powers that be, the ruling class, is panicked, and we're gonna take a step back, and before we show the clip of the CIA, we're gonna be talking about Project Mockingbird. That's where we're gonna start. And folks, if you haven't gone down the rabbit hole, go down the rabbit hole. That is actually been released, where it was an official government propaganda program. And what they were doing, when you hear some of these terms about how we overthrow other governments and that sort of thing, what they do is they start controlling the media, controlling the messaging, and then they rile up. That it happened in Ukraine. That's how we got Zelensky, is they got everybody riled up, and then they shifted the narrative. But it came out in government testimony that these things are happening, and you're going to hear Congress people, member from the CIA. We've got quite a few video clips today, so it should be pretty exciting. But to put myself as a real world example, if you remember in the lead up to COVID, what was the most common entertainment that was out there? It was The Walking Dead, it was zombies, it was all that sort of genre. And it's funny because I remember talking to one of my buddies, and I'm like, this is bad. They all this stuff coming out talking about viruses, zombies, all that kind of thing. And it's interesting because we met for lunch about a month before the pandemic. And he's like, "Oh, what's new?" And I said, "You know what? I just liquidated all my stock. I moved all my stocks into precious metals and durable goods." And he's like, "Why'd you do that?" I'm like, "I don't know what's going to happen. You see all these things pinging, and we've been programmed for so long to fear these viruses. And now they're doing the zombie genre, but it's kind of the same thing." And it was funny because then he's like, "You are such a batshit crazy conspiracy theorist." And then all of a sudden, like 60 days later, he calls me up, and when the stock market, if you remember, it's like conk, he goes, "You're a genius." And I'm like, "No, you just see this stuff coming." And that's why in kind of the second half of the episode, we're going to talk about some of the things that they're priming you for. They're priming the pump.
Well, Jason, let me one up your story there a little bit. Remember social distancing, how they determined 6 feet?
Yeah.
They admitted that they just kind of made it up because 6 feet's a number you can wrap your head around. It translates in 2 meters basically, so it's easy to do the math and imagine yourself standing one person's length apart. In 2010, they released a movie called Contagion, and in
Yep.
that movie, we don't have a clip of that one. One of the main characters says that, boy, the best thing to fight this virus, this global pandemic in the 2010 movie, is social distancing. We know that there's no science behind that. However, if you believe in predictive programming, and we're just kind of laying some dots out for you, you connect them as you will, you could go back to that movie and say, "Oh, wait a second, they got us ready to do social distancing, even though there's no science to support it. But now we're ready for it when there's a real virus."
Yeah, I gotta say, it's funny you say that. That's one of my favorite movies. And in the pandemic, watching that, and then you go, "Holy cow, they made this 13 years earlier! Like, this is crazy." And you start connecting some of these dots. So, Todd, where do we start on our journey?
I think we need to define, let's go through Operation Mockingbird. Let's define predictive programming. We're 10 minutes in here. What are we talking about, folks? And then, Jason, we've got to get to this 1975 Church Committee hearing where they've got the director of the CIA, William Colby, in front of Congress admitting everything that is going on here. So, Jason, let me pull up a definition, and I'm going to Wikipedia, and I'm doing a left-wing source just to be Facebook-friendly here with us right now. Operation Mockingbird is an alleged large-scale program of the United States CIA that began in the early years of the Cold War. Okay, so we're going back a long time and attempted to manipulate domestic American news media organizations for propaganda purposes. Jason, I'm going to fast forward down here. Here's the background here, and then where have we heard this before? In the early years of the Cold War, efforts were made by the United States government to use mass media to influence public opinion internationally. I go to the Patriot Act immediately because I think, oh, we're just trying to get terrorists overseas. And look how it starts off with propagandizing foreign governments, foreign countries, protecting ourselves from foreign enemies. And it always comes back to us in America.
Right. And it's funny you say that because if people will call you crazy, like break out your tinfoil hat. And it's like, no, this is real. This was a government operation Freedom of Information Act, these documents have been released. And right now, like Todd said earlier, we have seen collusion between Twitter, Facebook. Think of fake news, what that's called. Think of promulgating diverse opinions. Thank God here, Twitter audience is big today. But think about if we didn't have Elon Musk on Twitter, how much different the news cycle would be. And we talked about on the last episode too, how the news media moves as this glob where they just all share the same narrative. Donald Trump's a dictator. Donald Trump's a dictator. Oh, he's worse than Hitler. And yeah, this has been going on for decades, folks, and this is going to blow your mind. Should we roll the clip, Todd?
Let's roll the clip. Here we go. This is CIA William Colby, 1975 Church Committee, if you want to Google some of the keywords here, but let's see what they had to say half a decade ago or half a century ago.
Real concern that planted stories intended to serve a national purpose abroad came home and were circulated here and believed here, because this would mean that the CIA could manipulate the news in the United States by channeling it through some foreign country. Now, we're looking at that very carefully.
Do you have any people being paid by the CIA who are contributing to a major circulation American journal?
We do have people who submit pieces to American journals.
Do you have any people paid by the CIA who are working for television networks?
This, I think, gets into the kind of getting into the details, Mr. Chairman, that I'd like to get into in executive session.
At CBS.
Okay, we could do that for the entire show. Just let you watch some YouTube channel with foreign captions, by the way.
I love the foreign
enjoyed that. If
subtitles.
you understand the language, congrats.
Yeah, I mean, most people don't know Chuck Callisto. Thanks for watching, Chuck. Chuck speaks that language. So if anybody has translation questions, tweet Chuck a DM on Twitter. But no, this is an actual congressional hearing. These are members of the CIA testifying in front of Congress that they have people in the media, they have people in entertainment that they feed stories to that they want to change the narrative.
And Jason, I have to go back. This was in 1975. Do you think the problem has gotten better or gotten worse with CIA deep state involvement in major forms of media that influence how we think and feel every day? Hollywood, cable television news, music, you name it. Do you think it got better or worse in the last 50 years?
Well, and we saw it come full circle when we were in the pandemic, right? And for normal folks, I think everybody initially was kind of scared. And there's some people out there that weren't, but we're like, holy cow, this could be bad. And then you get into it and you see, holy cow, everybody is promulgating these same opinions. CNN has their death tracker on there. Everybody stay locked down, get the shot, all these things. It was coordinated. It was, and you know now that these same government agencies that after the Church Commission said, oh, no, we're going to get out of that game. That's not our game. We're doing it still because they're being sued right now in court. And it's remarkable, the predictive programming.
And boy, you talked about the ticker on CNN. I can't help but wonder, this again, Facebook, this is my own wondering here. This is not an assertion, but boy, was it convenient that during an election year with who now Mr. Dictator himself trying to run for re-election in 2020 dealt with not only the virus, but then the sudden influx of people in the streets protesting for the Summer of Love. But that ticker, we saw that every day, cases, deaths, whatever they could promote the most. Jason, do you remember when CNN took down that ticker?
Yeah.
What day
right
was
after
that?
the election?
That was the day Biden got inaugurated. Folks, you can't make this up. Look for yourself. Fact check me on that one. CNN took down their ticker for COVID cases and deaths on January 20th, 2021. So to Jason's point about coordination, someone was, it couldn't be all at MSNBC, CNN, all on their own station chiefs decided we're done with this, we've moved on here. Because recall that the mandate to get yourself injected was still coming down the pike. So it wasn't that COVID had gone away, but someone decided that the messaging needed to be different.
Well, yeah, and even if you think about that, they still had mandates. They were still asking for financial assistance. They were still doing different programs. I mean, they're still doing COVID programs today. You know, the pandemic's down. How come our death tracker isn't up there? You know, are suddenly people not dying? Like, is that a thing? And it's crazy. So as you start going down this rabbit hole, you say, okay, it's been proven that there was a time in America when they were doing this predictive programming, trying to change opinions. And Todd, what's interesting too, if you look at those church commission hearings, what opinion were they trying to change?
Well, initially, like we said with Operation Mockingbird, they were trying to change opinions overseas about how other people felt in their own countries. But like we said, it always comes back. That's the pretext to start this operation. Like, no, we won't do it on American soil. That violates the Constitution. Meanwhile, they don't care about the Constitution. They're going to influence minds right here at home.
But when they were influencing minds, what was the topic? Do you remember?
You're going to have to refresh me on that one, Jason. It wouldn't be a show without you stumping me with one of your great questions.
I was going to say, folks in the chat, let me know if you know what it was about. We were in the middle of the Cold War. They were promulgating anti-Russian propaganda.
Oh, I've heard that one before.
Yeah, I was going to say, has anybody heard any anti-Russian propaganda? Like, I'm just saying, has anybody on Twitter been called a Putin lover? You know, I remember I tweeted the other day about we need to stop sending money to Ukraine, and all of a sudden all the bots hit my account like, oh, you're a Putin lover, oh, you're a Putin lover, move to Russia. And then you look and they had just joined in October 2023. Yeah, I'm sure there isn't CIA or FBI involvement in that.
Yeah, see, you get all the Ukraine, you get the blue and yellow flags on Twitter. I get all the Chinese characters that follow me.
Oh, yeah. Well, she just wants to be friends. How's your day going? I love those. Hey, but back to the topic at hand. So back in the 50s, 60s, 70s, Cold War, anti-Russian propaganda, this has been congressional testimony. It's now accepted widely. Even Todd read from Wikipedia, which is one of the most left sources that you'll find. And then the government said, oh, no, we're sorry. We won't continue messing with you. But then, Todd, what did they start priming us for next?
Well, it depends what year you're looking at here. Jason, we don't have the video up because I think you and I are both a little hesitant to maybe go down this rabbit hole with video and audio. If you folks want to do a little bit of your own research, though, 9/11 seems to be one of the larger conspiracies that there's a lot of different paths to go down there. We've never really gotten a straight answer from the government. The farther out we are from it, they release more information that doesn't seem to really jive with the initial narrative that they set out in the first place. But boy, there are everything from Simpsons to X-Men comics to Marvel comics to Friends. Jason, I'm going to pull that image up in just a little bit here. Some of the most significant cultural media at the time all seem to have something with the Twin Towers on fire, falling down, getting attacked, multiple images with airplanes. And look, there's a reasonable explanation to all this. You could say that the Twin Towers were iconic structures in New York City, one of the most famous cities in the world. So it would make sense that they would use that imagery because we can all relate to it somehow. But Jason, what's the tinfoil hat explanation for that?
Well, I was going to say, if I'm going tinfoil hat, I'm going to say they start introducing this into the American culture so that when it happens, people don't completely lose their mind. They lose their mind enough because what was the biggest, most dangerous outcome of 9/11? They got to institute more governmental control through the Patriot Act. And I hate to say it, Republicans, conservatives, we led that charge. After this happened, after the predictive programming kind of primed the pump, the towers, 9/11 happened. You know, we've talked about how it's kind of a lot of weird stuff on there. You don't really know for sure. But then as it continues on, the first thing we do is give government all this overreach power, and then boom, now 20 years later, it's being directed at us. But Todd, let's start maybe play a couple of those cartoons just to show you how early they start this stuff.
Well, let me give a definition first, Jason, while we'll print up the clip here, because you nailed it on the head about 9/11. Could it be that they were priming the pump, so to speak, so that when we actually experience the towers going down, we are a little more prepared for it? Here's how predictive programming is described. It's a subtle form of psychological conditioning provided by the media to acquaint the public with planned societal changes, keyword planned, to be implemented by our leaders. If and when these changes are put through, the public will already be familiarized with them and will accept them as natural progressions, thus lessening possible public resistance and commotion. I mean, look, if 9/11 was planned like that and they were allowing us to get exposed to that early on, that seems to fit the definition pretty well because, like you said, Jason, here's the Patriot Act, and here's young Todd in 2001 saying, I have nothing to hide, U.S. government. Go get those bad guys in the Middle East. I want to feel safe at home. I bought into that narrative as worse as anyone could have. I was right there. I was primed for it, if you will.
I remember at the time, I've always been I describe myself politically. I've always been conservative, but I hated the Republican Party because growing up, I'm like, they just want to go start a war and send people like me over there to get killed so they can get rich. But it became fascinating because after that, when everybody was screaming for that, I remember talking to people and saying, are you insane? Why on earth would we ever give the government more power? And I was called a terrorist sympathizer. I was called every name in the book from my conservative friends. I can't believe that you would oppose this. And I'm like, are you kidding me? Someday we're pointing that gun in the Middle East. Someday they're going to point that gun at us. Now, 20 years later, we're sitting here. And just this week, the government re-upped FISA courts, which means they can surveil darn near any American they want.
They really enjoyed getting to abuse that surveillance program. So thank goodness we have Congress and they're looking out for us, the people that voted them in. And now they can keep spying on us. And Jason, the Patriot Act was not written after 9/11. I don't think enough people appreciate this fact.
Right.
The Patriot Act was written and then released to us and then put into place once 9/11 occurred. It was not a response to 9/11. This was a massive package already created, and then they just needed the perfect vehicle to bring that to us. Patriot Act, 9/11 happens, here comes the Patriot Act. It was not the other way around.
You know, if I believed in conspiracy theories, Todd, I would have thought they were just waiting for something really bad to happen. But if they would have done that, they would have started greasing the skids by introducing it into common media. So do we have any of that?
You know, Jason, we don't have. I want to point people in their own direction to do a little of their own research there. There are some great videos out there if you want to do just 9/11 predictive programming. The clips are too long for us to really dive into on this show. But, Jason, we do have some current media forms if we wanted to get into maybe what we're worried about next.
Oh, yeah. Shoot, I thought we had those ones that we played earlier. The G.I. Joe one.
Folks, this is what happens on a live show sometimes.
Right. Shoot, it's gone. It's gone.
It was in there.
Yeah. All right. Well, we'll move on to the next thing. But if you go back, we had a video earlier. Actually, it's probably best we don't play it because we'll get copyrighted. They had towers falling down in G.I. Joe cartoons, Fantastic Four cartoons. They had it falling down in comic books. They had it falling down in like 6 or 7 different patriotic, conservative media sources, and it was just kind of worked in there.
And I'm just going to add this too. If anyone watched Friends in the 90s, I'm just going to describe the image. Go back and look up the Friends logo for yourself here. In the 2 towers on that logo image they have, if you look in there, Friends is spelled E-N-D in the middle. Guess where E-N-D lines up perfectly with the Twin Towers? So if you want to say end Twin Towers, they were very subtly getting that to you. And Jason, one of the things that I'm glad I kind of brought that up because it primed my own memory here. Predictive programming is, yes, a way for government to control. If you want to go even one more layer of tinfoil hat here right now, though, I know that the word Illuminati is bandied about. I tend to think that there is a small cabal that wants to control the rest of humanity. Name it whatever you want. I think it has a lot of different names to conceal itself. But if you ascribe to the belief that there is a small group of powerful people that want to control the rest of us, this is not just about priming us, so to speak, so we are more acceptant of it. There's also something called revelation of the method, and we can get really in the weeds on this part here. This is their code of morality, though. You and I say, do not steal, do not murder, honor thy mother and father. That's our code of morality. For these elites, though, their morality is that they have to reveal to us all the bad things they're going to be doing in order to absolve their conscience and absolve their own sins, in a sense. And so this is called karma cleansing. And folks, dropping the terms on you now here, we are really in the weeds in tinfoil territory. They do this. They say we're going to take down the Twin Towers and all these different media forms because it absolves them of any guilt or any wrongdoing. They said, hey, we told you, public. We said we were going to take the towers down. We showed you in Friends. We showed you in Spider-Man. We showed you in X-Men. We showed you in The Simpsons. That's not our fault if you didn't understand that. So it's kind of an important point here, too, as we're talking about it. Yes, they're priming us so we don't revolt and we maybe accept it a little bit better, but they're also doing it so they don't have to feel that guilt in their sense. They're clearing their karma by revealing their method to us.
So if you believe this exists, and we got a couple hundred people watching on the various platforms, by the way, thanks for tuning in. Make sure you like, comment, and share on the show. That helps us get reach on what we do. So Todd, we should start with the new show that just dropped on Netflix and dropped the trailer for this. And I got to preface this because I had heard a little bit about it online. And then a friend of mine, or a friend of my wife's, who actually happens to be a Biden voter, she thinks we're kind of prepping weirdos. You know, we've got survival food. We're starting to get things ready. And we had them over, and we actually watched Lady Ballers, which, by the way, phenomenal show on the Daily Wire. It's better the second time than the first. It's kind of like Dodgeball, where it's even funnier every time you watch. And she had posted on Facebook, she said, I just watched the most amazing movie and I need to start stocking up. And it's like, here's somebody who never thought about prepping. And in one day, by watching one movie, all of a sudden now she's buying survival food. It's remarkable. So should we start with the trailer, Todd?
Here we go. And then we can talk about who's behind it, Jason. So buckle up, folks. We got a 2-minute trailer we're going to show you.
I went online this morning and I rented us a beautiful house out by the beach. I figured if I made the reservation and packed our bags, it would eliminate most of the reasons to say no.
Oh, this is nice. Kids look so happy.
The Wi-Fi isn't working. Get a pad.
I'm so sorry to bother you, that this is our house.
This is your house.
We were driving back to the city, then something happened.
You want to stay here, but we're staying here.
We need to get them out of here.
I need to think everything's gonna be okay.
Everything is going to be okay, isn't it?
We are seeing ongoing cyber attacks across the country.
Something is happening, and I don't trust them.
Everything I know, I have told you.
I don't believe you.
I would do anything to protect my family. What you do is your business.
Get in the car right now!
Haven't you been picking up on what's going on out there?
Whatever it is, it's happening to all of us.
I just want to know, what is the truth?
Well,
So here you have a movie. No spoilers in the chat. And I'll be honest, I haven't watched it yet. My wife and I are planning on watching it here in the next week or so. But this show, normal people enjoying a nice vacation. You add a little bit of a racial component, which we'll get to in a second. And then all of a sudden, a catastrophic event, EMP, cyber attack, won't spoil the movie, happens. Everything starts shutting down. Society collapses. And I don't know about y'all, I remember Chinese spy balloons flying over America. I remember attacks on infrastructure. I remember all these things, Taiwan and China, things are about to get dicey over there. Todd, what was your thought when you first kind of saw that trailer?
So it really makes you wonder, Jason. You see this and you're prompted to reflect. Well, I'm going to be honest. I don't know how many people in American society anymore have the ability to like self-respect or, look inward about some issues. But it made me wonder, like, what would I do in that situation? Okay, here we are reliant on technology. I need internet. I need television, phone, computer, unfortunately. What would I do if it all went down? How would I contact my family? How would I go get my kids from daycare? Like, what if my car doesn't start, right? So we saw them driving cars, so we don't know what kind of cyber attack it was necessarily. But what would I do? Am I prepared for that situation? So I started to ask myself all these questions. Boy, if they were trying to prepare me for something, I'm glad that I had that opportunity to think in advance.
Well, yeah, and if you take the framework that Todd laid out before we showed the clip about they're telling you to absolve themselves of their guilt, they're kind of warning you that something bad's going to happen. And now Todd and I, we both fall on the conspiratorial end and the prepper end. We're not ready for the cabin in the woods with the gun turrets yet and like solar generators. Well, we're not that far off. We're in the like, hey, I've got my buckets of survival food. It's time to get some precious metals, stock up on ammo. Like, that's just kind of what we do, buy some extra canned goods, that sort of thing. And so this has that impact on us. A friend of mine who watched this is like, holy cow, I need to probably start looking at this. And so if you wonder about predictive programming, then I mean, there's no greater case of, hey, they're preparing you for something. So then you start looking into the movie and you go, oh, this is wild. Todd went, how does that all of a sudden take a weird plot twist?
Well, Jason, it's really interesting when you look at who was behind helping produce this film. And it was none other than former President Barack Hussein Obama and Michelle. And so now, okay, you talked about the racial element. We have another clip, folks. You're not going to want to miss this. It's unbelievable. But now you have Barack Obama, who many people say is still in charge. He's in his third term as president right now, kind of dictating behind the scenes what Joe Biden's trying to stumble through with his words and falling down off airplane steps. But they say Obama might really be in charge in the White House still. Why would he, if he's in that inner circle of global elites, want to make a movie that prepares you for an utter catastrophe?
Yeah, it was funny because you hate to be a conspiracy theorist, right? Well, I shouldn't say that. I enjoy being a conspiracy theorist.
You don't want to be right, though, sometimes.
Right, yeah. You want to be wrong. You want people to call you crazy, and it turns out I'm crazy. Yeah, they're not going to do that. And I watched this movie, and it's funny because it came out, and I heard about it from friends. We watched Lady Baller, so I start looking in the movie like, oh, that looks pretty good. We might have to watch it. And then I look, and the production team of Barack and Michelle Obama.
And what do they have to offer? Ask yourselves, folks, what do the Obamas have to offer Hollywood, if just for fictional creative purposes? Are you telling me that that's the best Hollywood has to offer, or are there other reasons?
Well, and of all the things that could be that they could get involved in, all the film projects, all the things they want to cover, any of this stuff, what are they going to choose to dig into? Let's do a movie about society collapsing because of like an EMP attack. I mean, it's crazy. But then once the Obamas produce, go ahead, Todd.
Oh no, while it was fresh in my mind here, let's add the racial element to this, because if you want to go tinfoil hat again and predictive programming, certainly the EMP route is one of them. I think, and we have written extensively on our Substack, and we've talked about it on the podcast, how we think America is also headed towards the South Africa mode, where there's going to be some real serious racial animus and violence. If the elites keep pushing their message of anti-whiteness over and over and again, you look at any DEI program, they hate you if you're white. Now, what's the logical conclusion if someone hates you and they see you as less than human? Answer that question yourself here. So Obama, I don't think he really cares for us that much. But here is a part of the movie that wasn't in the trailer, but it is going to blow your mind when you watch it. It's a 12-second clip, and then we can follow up on this a little bit more.
I'm asking for you to remember that if the world falls apart, trust should not be doled out easily to anyone, especially white people.
Hey, Jason, so now we're in a global crisis. We lost our electricity. We lost our internet. And now, add to that, we hate white people. What do you think happens in a world that's lawless, no communication, and now I hate this person that lives next to me?
Yeah, and it's fascinating when you talk about Barack Hussein Obama and Big Mike Obama as it relates to racial relations in the country. And what's fascinating is if you go back and look pre-Obama term 1 and say how many people, like, where was race at pre-Obama term 1? And I have to say race wasn't a huge deal. It didn't dominate all of our institutions. It didn't dominate all of our entertainment. It wasn't such an egregious issue. Who knew that electing the first African American or Black president, we would be less racially good now, however many years later, than we were when we started. And you can even go back and look at like Google searches for terms racism, and now they've taken it to the extreme. And I got to give a shout out to Will from our Substack. It's at www.theamericantribune.news. And that's where we cover some of the topics we can't cover on some of the platforms. And he has reached out to people in South Africa, and the logical conclusion of where this goes in America is happening down there. He did an interview with one of the Boers, who are one of the ethnic groups down in South Africa, and it'll make your toes curl. And then you extrapolate it out and you say, it's not so out of reach that we could see this happening in America in the next 10, 15, 20 years. It's pretty remarkable.
Yeah, honestly, Jason, I don't see any other conclusion. The narratives they're pushing, there's no other outcome possible. And I think that's the outcome they desire. The global elites want chaos among our class down here. They honestly don't care whether we live or die. They're going to just enjoy the spoils of this battle, but they would love to see us fight each other down here.
Well, and it's really remarkable too, because if you look, we like to say on the show, one of the taglines is it's not about right or left. It's about us versus them. The elites, they want you fighting with liberals if you're a conservative. And if you're a liberal, they want you fighting with conservatives. Meanwhile, they are robbing this country. They're opening the borders. They're devaluing your currency. They're doing everything they can to make you dependent on that government, because as soon as you're dependent on the government, they control you. And as soon as they can control what you say and how you make money and all those sorts of things, they control you and they get to tell you what to do. And that's what's funny. Some of the freest thinkers on the left who think they're a cat and don't know what their gender is, they think that government control doesn't come with conformity. Oh no, because I got to tell you, at some point the government needs to get work done. That's why if you look in any of these socialist countries, the logical end is when the people that are producing stop producing, they need to encourage everybody to produce. And these folks who right now are living high off the hog because I don't have to work because I'm voting for this socialist takeover, they're going to be the ones with we'll all end up in the salt mines, right?
I was going to say, Jason, there are some great memes out there of people with their coal mining hats on and going into the mines, and the thought bubble is like, I thought I was going to paint rainbows on walls all day. Like, these communist artists think that there's going to be some utopia on the other side. It couldn't be farther from the truth.
Right. So we've got, okay, they're priming us for some sort of pandemic. They're priming us for that. And it was funny because when I saw that preview, the first thing I thought was Chinese spy balloons, because you find out they were actually wargaming if we got hit with an EMP. If we got hit with several of them and it took out major chunks of our power grid, the American population lasts about I think it's 90 days. We lose like 70% of the population in America.
Well, and Jason, think about it. We're up here in Minnesota right now. We are having, shout out to climate change, because we're having a fantastic December here right now. December 15th, not an inch of snow on the ground. It was 50 degrees yesterday. So if that's what we're worried about, send it our way here, because I'm digging these winters. But in a normal winter, if it was negative 20 degrees and we lost power, and the northern part of the United States, that is game over for half this country in a matter of days.
Right. And it's funny you say that too, because they want us all driving electric cars. Todd, how's that electric car going to do in 20 below zero?
20 below zero, and you can't use electric vehicles because I remember that trailer. It showed them zigzagging along here without any drivers in them. So suddenly those are all commandeered. I don't see the EVs working out too well in that scenario.
Right. So like I say, so they're priming the pump. They're starting to get us ready for this. Shout out to Linda. She's jumped ahead in our thing. They want an insurrection so they can come in and take control. NATO's already here and ready before the election. So mail-in ballots and utter chaos.
Linda's got a large tinfoil hat. I love it.
I love Linda. You guys send us your picture with your tinfoil hat. Now, here's what I'm going to say, folks. How many times had you ever heard the word insurrection before January 6th? Had you ever heard that word, Todd?
Had I ever used it in everyday parlance? 0 times. I can tell you with confidence, 0 times.
And what is an insurrection? Just a quick off the cuff.
If you're asking me, I thought it's when you overthrew the government. And in my mind, in order to achieve an insurrection, you would probably have to have a sizable army, let's say, an army that had weapons, and maybe a leader leading the charge, so that after that insurrection is complete, you have a new government to then operate. I'm just trying to think about the insurrection we were told happened and if that worked the same way or not.
I gotta say, it's my pinned tweet for those who follow me on Twitter at JRob from Minnesota. Folks that think that people on the right showed up to overthrow the government and didn't bring guns, like, y'all are nuts. And you need to go to a biker bar, because go to one biker bar on a Saturday afternoon and there will be 100 guns in that biker bar. And if you compare that to the number the hundreds of thousands of people brought on January 6th, isn't even close. So just to put in perspective, but
grandmothers, Jason, don't forget, we had grandmothers in the Capitol. So we all had 2 grandmothers. They were pretty feisty, so I wouldn't put it past the 70-year-old women in there on their crutches, ready to overthrow the government.
Yeah, I can just imagine, MAGA grandma with her Make America Great hat saying, I am the ruler of the United States. Like, I am in the chair. I am now Speaker of the House.
1512, folks. 1512C2. Look it up.
Right. Yeah. Go check out Wayne Dupree podcast. Yesterday we went deep in on this. It was great. But anyways, so all of a sudden they start using this word that we've never heard of, and it becomes regular lexicon, and they extend it beyond any definition. And now the lexicon is Donald Trump is a dictator. And I guarantee you, go on CNN, MSNBC, any of those liberal outlets, and they are going to tell you Donald Trump's a dictator. They're going to have Liz Cheney on there saying Donald Trump's a dictator. Adam Kinzinger. And you're going to have all these leftist pundits saying, like, oh, he's telling you he's going to be a dictator. Believe him. So, but a lot of people don't watch the news, but everybody watches movies, right, Todd?
A lot of people enjoy movies. We cut the cord in this family, but, I can't speak locally. Overall, people love movies, and who blames them? They want 2 hours to escape from the real world. That's the whole point of entertainment, movies, sports. Those were supposed to exist so we could get away from all the nonsense and reality here. Turns out we were told we needed escapism as a way just to prepare us for all the bad things that were going to happen. Do you want to show the other trailer? Because, folks, it's not just the Obama movie. They're coming out with all sorts of stuff to get you ready for what's coming up next.
Oh, yeah. Get this next one teed up.
And this one is called Civil War. So now you're primed. Civil War.
The United States Army ramps up activity.
The White House issued warnings to the Western forces as well as the Florida Alliance.
The three-term president assures the uprising will be dealt with swiftly.
Let me know if you want to try anything on.
I guess aware there's like a pretty huge civil war going on all across America.
We just try to stay out. With what we see on the news, seems like it's for the best.
Citizens of America, the so-called Western forces of Texas and California have suffered a very great defeat at the hands of the United States military.
Mr. President, do you regret the use of airstrikes against American citizens? We're moving to D.C. today.
We need to go down there.
They shoot journalists on sight in the Capitol. Every instinct in me says this is death. What if...
Every time I survived the war zone, I thought I was sending a warning home. Don't do this. But here we are.
There's some kind of misunderstanding here. Look, we're American, okay?
Okay. What kind of American are you? You don't know?
The Western forces will reach the White House on July 4th.
Oh my God.
Get in the car! Get in the car! Move, move, move!
You're gonna hang back.
I'm not hanging back.
One nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Go, 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 go!
God bless America.
Just in time for the election season. How about that? Spring 2024.
I was going to say the release date on this movie is, it sounds like initially it's March 2024. So right about the time primaries are wrapping up, and it's pretty, it's before the conventions, but Donald Trump is a dictator, is going to be in full force. You could hear in that preview, like nobody's seen the movie yet, but in the preview they talk about the Texas, Florida contingent. So it's pretty clear how they're framing up how they want to do it, that a contingent, and they also throw in California, which is kind of weird. But they're marching to Washington D.C. to launch a civil war. You know what's funny too, Todd, when we talk about the race stuff, pretty much everybody you see fighting on the side of the insurrectionists, did you notice what color they were?
I noticed it right away, and I hate that I did, because that's the leftist programming right there to make you see race. But I'm also glad I did, because Jason, they looked like me. They looked like you and me fomenting an insurrection and leading a civil war against the government.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing they really needed to do is just throw everybody in a red MAGA hat. You know what I mean?
They might as well have a red uniform and white letters on their hat.
Yeah, exactly. And it's funny you say that, because they use, like, if you look at that one guy's outfit, I think it was his glasses or something that were like bright red, and they're just trying to subtly put in this messaging that the red people are bad, the people that wear red.
And Jason, look, our overlay on this podcast is red. I don't think that's an accident necessarily. Okay, that's the conservative color right now, but when you go and watch this movie or watch this trailer again, look for even subtle things like that. Like, what's the color of these insurrectionists right now, of this Civil War charge? What's the skin color of all of them? Think about the narratives that we've talked about with Obama trying to promote in the other film. It all adds up. And Jason, this is a really interesting aside here. So if we want to talk about predictive programming specifically, the guy that's writing and directing this film, Alex Garland, I didn't know much about him, but if you saw in the trailer, it popped up some different movies he's been a part of. Okay, so Civil War, we can all understand where this is leading us to. Here's some of the other films he's done, though. One called Ex Machina, which is about a programmer who's invited by his CEO to administer the Turing test to an intelligent humanoid robot. Okay, so we're in the middle of AI. That's an interesting angle that he's taken. Another one is called Annihilation, which happens to work with a mysterious quarantine zone of mutating plants and animals caused by an alien presence. Okay, we've had some more UFO hearings as of late, so interesting angle there as well. All sci-fi related. And then the other one, 28 Days Later, if you recall, that's an early 2000s film about a contagion, a global pandemic. So somehow this guy is involved in some of the largest narratives and conspiracy theories that we're talking about.
Yeah, it's funny you say that too. And we had talked about it before when we mentioned about priming you for COVID, how 28 Days Later, great movie. I think they ended up making 3 of them.
Great
And
movie. I mean, in terms of talking about a movie, right?
yeah. Yeah, I mean, from an entertainment perspective, it was great. But what was the theory of that? There's this horrible virus contagion. It gets out. It wipes out all the people. And if you were a conspiracy theorist, you'd say, well, so when a bad virus hits, I have to be compliant or we're all going to die. And if you go back and think, and just think of that, say, how many zombie movies or virus outbreak movie did they make in the lead up to COVID? And it's remarkable. And now, Todd, have you seen a single one of those made since COVID?
It's funny you asked that question. Jason, I got another one for you, though, too. All of the movies, Contagion, 28 Days Later, there's a host of other global pandemic movies. They all got uploaded to Netflix in the winter of 2019. Imagine that.
Weird. You know,
November, December
sure
of 2019, suddenly your major streaming service has all of these pandemic movies.
Right. I'm sure it's just a coincidence, Todd. You know, I'm sure that there was nothing kind of behind that.
But Jason, I want to add on to your point too. You talked about in these pandemic movies, who's always in charge at the end of it. Whenever you go to the quarantine zone, it's the U.S. military with armed individuals. And guess who doesn't have any weaponry? Guess who doesn't really have any decision making? They're just thankful for the presence of that military and government to keep them safe.
Yeah, and actually that's the only thing that works out for people is when you're compliant and you go to the military camp. Anybody that stays out, like they go through these horrors, and any of the monkeys who aren't compliant, like they get electrocuted.
It's pretty astounding stuff. But again, folks, connect your own dots. Maybe this is purely entertainment. Maybe it's all coincidence. Maybe there's only so many different angles you can take on a pandemic movie. But Jason, it'd be fun to brainstorm a pandemic movie outcome where it didn't end with the military in charge. I gotta guess someone's creative enough to do that. We just haven't seen it yet.
Yeah, exactly. So what are they getting us ready for, folks? That's kind of where we land, and what do we do with that? So if you believe that there's global elites, whatever you want to call them, if you believe that the CIA, the FBI are doing predictive programming, which they've already admitted to, if you believe that they're working with big tech and to control the messaging, control the narrative, which has been proven, the question lands on what do you do? And this is where everybody's got to make their right decisions for them and their families, that sort of thing. But I'll just talk about how I approach it. First, don't fall for the right versus left narrative. Everybody that's a conservative, we have a lot of conservatives that watch this show. They want you to yell at your Democrat neighbor with the Black Lives Matter sign in their yard. Many of those people are too far gone, full disclosure. But there's a lot of people that aren't. And they are starting to wake up to what's happening in America. And you need to help them see. Because I got to say, before President Trump came down that escalator, Republicans were the idiots that voted for the Patriot Act. Republicans were the ones that were giving government control. And that's why we need the normal everyday citizens on the left to wake up. So first thing, and that's why we always like to say, share this content, especially with somebody you might not politically agree with. A lot of my friends voted Democrat, but I'm not going to let the government separate me from my friends and neighbors. Second thing is don't fall for the right versus left. Second thing is start to make some basic preparations. Todd, what kind of basic preparations do you think people need to do?
I mean, first and foremost, you're going to need food. You need to have a good water supply, I would add as well. So out where we are, we've got a well, so we've got our bottled water. We've got some filters in place here. But if you're hooked up to city water and that's the first thing to go, I mean, you can stretch it out and be miserable without food, but you cannot go without hydration. So you're going to want a reliable water supply would be my number one advice there. And then, Jason, a lot of people rely on medication nowadays. A lot of people could fall sick. I think it's extremely important to make sure that you've got those resources stockpiled as well in case an emergency comes about too.
Yeah, and it's funny you say that because what my wife and I do is we like to go too deep on a lot of things. if that makes sense. So if we have one laundry soap, we have the backup full container. And as soon as we open the backup, we buy another one. And now on a lot of basic supplies, we're actually too deep. So here's my laundry soap. Here's my first one. Here's my second one, because that's going to get me through a few months. Think of basic supplies you need too. Things like bleach, things like batteries, things like canned foods, things like survival foods. Those are all things that you can start stocking up on to make sure you're ready. Because, Todd, what was the first thing that ran out when the pandemic hit?
Toilet paper.
Right.
Joking, but there was no toilet paper.
Who would have thought of all the things that we would have run out of? It would have been butt wipe. And then it went into a lot of other things. There were supply chain shortages and all those sorts of things. But think about those everyday use, like what can I not live without? Buy an extra one, buy an extra two. It won't expire. When one laundry detergent goes empty, just replace it with the next one and just keep rotating it through. But we really want to help people see what's going on and make sure you're prepared for your family and loved ones.
Can I add one more thing, Jason?
Yeah.
If you do this, don't let anyone else know about it, because guess what? When your neighbor runs out of food and they have to support their family next door and they know you have something, I'm sorry, that's human nature right there. That's survival instinct kicked in. You need to keep it quiet, but then you also need to be prepared to defend it. And you defend it with whatever means you are comfortable with. I have a nice arsenal at home, Jason. I'll just say that. When push comes to shove, maybe it won't make a difference, but I'm not going to be here empty-handed when someone comes barging through my door either.
And it's funny because people say, man, are these guys crazy? And why are they telling us to be ready? I am a firm believer that between now and the presidential election of 2024, we're facing something major. I can't tell you what something major is going to be.
Is it an EMP or a civil war, Jason, just out of curiosity?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, we've got China floating balloons over us. We have them conditioning us about EMP attacks. We have real war in the Middle East with Israel and Hamas. We have the Ukraine debacle. We have the dollar ready to collapse. We have BRICS going on. We have a lot of crazy things that are happening in this world.
And we have Donald Trump ahead in the polls, Jason. The motivation is there for something to happen.
Right. And if you think about that, oh my God, Donald Trump, if you think of how hard they've gone after him, and we talked about it on yesterday's podcast, that's why they're all scared, because they have levered everything at Donald Trump. And I'm convinced if Trump gets in, he's going to repay the favor. And it's just going to be, hey, it was okay for you guys to do it, so now it's okay for me to do it. I mean,
we can only hope. Like you say, Jason, like we say now at American Tribune, it might be our motto now, but we hope Donald Trump is the Donald Trump the left is saying he is.
Oh my God. Yeah, Trump 2024. And if you are going to go in there and do all the things the left said you're going to, that's what's funny. Every time they tweet something or drop a video, it's like, you don't need to encourage me to vote for him anymore. He's going to go in and
you are just making me want him to be president more.
Right. Yeah, I'm already voting for him. Don't tell me he's going to lock you all up, because that'll just make me want to vote more. So yeah, hopefully this everybody enjoyed this week's episode. Prepare yourself, prepare your friends and loved ones. When people look at you and say you're a little crazy, that's okay. You're always welcome here on Freedom from the Press with Todd and I. We're a little crazy too. We'll probably get back to a little more current events and politics next week, but we really wanted to stop and deep dive into some of this stuff, let you know the history, and let you know what we think they're priming you for. And I'll say this, my big ask, and I'll turn over to Todd to close us out. We live in pretty crazy times. The only way us as everyday citizens can defeat these oligarchs is if we unite against the power structures that are trying to separate us. So we ask you to share the content, share the show, and really I would encourage you to share it with somebody you might not politically agree with, because we need our friends on the left to wake up just like us on the right are waking up. So with that, over to Todd to close us out.
Absolutely. This was a fun episode, a little off the beaten path for us, but great engagement again, great viewership. It was great to have you with us here today. I think I said it 3 times, so there's the trifecta. But folks, have a great weekend. There's number 4, and we'll catch you next Friday.